What's happening, video world? And to all my video viewers, welcome once again to the channel. Yeah, that's right. That's the channel that's bringing complete entertainment all rolled up in one. What channel might that be? Well, I have to tell you that glad you thought it. The channel I'm referring to is the one and only one, DJBelong.studio.com. You might say, what's so different about this channel? Well, I say to you that difference is you. That's right. The difference will be you tune in to keep up with the variety of current topics, including music, sports, domestic, and worldwide violence. Should I say worldwide social events? Politics, religion, and relationships, just to mention a few. It's all about the 3 E's, as I like to call it: entertaining, enlightening, and education. Education. You educate you in various ways under one umbrella, and that umbrella, of course, is Belong Studio. Today, our feature will be what's really going on. Looking behind the scenes. Welcome to my brand new show here on YouTube. The show is titled, as I mentioned, What's Really Going On. We're trying to look behind the scenes. What's not being said, but what's really being done. It's all about things you may or may not be aware of. Things that could be, would be. Subject matter will include things like what's going on in your communities, city, state, country. Things that are going on around the world as well. The objective again is to entertain, enlighten, and educate. Now, they say power is knowledge, and knowledge is power. I say let's turn on that switch to that knowledge, energize our thought process. Energize that thought process to help you figure out what's really going on. With that being said, let's get this thing kicked off and started today. Now, today we'll be talking about, I'm sure you've heard, if you haven't heard, you got to be under a rock. Everything that's been going on with Kanye West and Kyrie. Okay? I'm sure you heard what's going on with that. So let's go ahead and dive into that. And with that being said, I'm going to bring my special guest on here tonight. We got Betty coming in and diving in. He's going to do his thing. He's going to shed some light and knowledge on it. And we're going to take a look at what's really going on with Kyrie and Kanye. What's going on behind this thing. With that said, Betty, you ready to hear
what's going on? What's going on, Bingo? How you doing, man?
LEDGE. Go ahead, baby.
How you doing? Yeah, I'm just being here, man. We're gonna talk about what's going on with Kyrie. I just when I watch those interviews, I have some opinion based on what Kanye's going through, what Kyrie's going through, some of the things that were said. They kind of talk about some of the things that I feel like Kyrie had the information, but because of his particular status playing in the NBA, he couldn't say what he wanted to say. And something I think Kanye knows what he wants to say, but I think the brother sometimes gets so emotional that he kind of loses what he's attempting to get across, or he's somewhat misunderstood. So I'm gonna try to see if I give out some of the information that I have. Hopefully bring some clarity to what some of those brothers are talking about. And I call myself a researcher because I like to read. I read history books and things like that. So I'm a researcher. So I've come across a lot of information. I just want to be able to share some of that information and hopefully bring some clarity to what some of those brothers was trying to say and was attempting to say. So, hey, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. So.
All right, let's do that, Benny. So listen, before we jump out there like that and kind of try to do a little bit of enlightenment on what's going on. Now, for me, I'm one of those people out there that is not highly knowledgeable of the subject matter, because obviously this is a deep subject matter. And so just for the average Joe or Larry or Harry or Barry, just kind of give us a little bit about what insight about what really is driving this whole scenario right now behind Hebrews and some of how that's related to how Kyrie is related to what they're saying, And without going into too much of a detail, just kind of for the give us the GE portion of it for the general population that ain't up to speed.
Well, just to kind of sum it up, the documentary itself, the Hebrews to Negroes documentary, was put together by a guy named Ron Dalton. And what he did was he did some research in trying to prove that the Hebrews in the Bible, the Israelites of the Bible, were black people. And not just black people, dark-skinned or melanated people, but are the people who have been dispersed all over the world. And we're talking about the Caribbean. We're talking about the west coast of Africa and other areas in Central Africa. And we're talking about the African Americans, that these groups, as well as some groups in India and other places, that these groups are indeed genetically related. And I'm not going to say genetically related, but they are the descendants of the biblical Hebrews. And that's the gist, of the documentary, that these groups are the descendants of the Hebrews or the Israelites in the Bible. So that's what the documentary was. And he was bringing DNA evidence and things of that nature. So, when Kyrie tweeted about the video, he was saying that what I believe he was saying was, hey, you guys take a look. This is interesting. That was the extent of it. Take a look. This is interesting. Right. Because I think we all read material and see material that we may not agree with everything, but sometimes there's some stuff in there that you find interesting. And I think that was the extent. Like, hey, check this out.
Absolutely.
This is some things that I've heard.
I would say too, Benny, is we're not. I'm trying to turn into a religious conversation, but right. You talk about how people read things differently. You take the Bible itself,
right? People
read it differently, right? Everybody got a different perspective on the definition and meaning behind it. But and then again, in this context, with the with what we're talking about here with Kyrie, there's a whole nother story behind it all, right. Despite what you've been reading in the Bible. So, right. I'm not trying to bash anybody that read the Bible. If you believe what you want, I mean, there's a reason we got however many different denominations around the world.
Absolutely, you got Protestants, Catholics, Baptists, Presbyterian, excuse me. You got all and everybody's reading the same book. So everybody comes to different conclusions and understandings. Presbyterian, I'm sorry. So like I say, in my personal opinion, that he's seen something that either he heard or he couldn't articulate, and he found it interesting. And when he tweeted it out, he just wanted people to take a look at this. It's some information in this documentary that you guys will find interesting. And I had seen the documentary maybe 2-3 years ago, and I actually went to a conference that the brother Ron Dalton had down here in Florida. And I listened to him, as well as he had another brother, Benaiah Israel, and other brothers to that nature. It was Pastor Johnson who was actually hosting the event. And Pastor Johnson, he's Israelite, and he had Shabbat services, and he had these brothers come in, and we actually, I'm not going to say premiered the video, but the documentary was shown, and other brothers from the educated brothers who have done a lot of background research on the African Americans being descendants of the biblical Hebrews, as well as brothers from other brothers from the West Indies and South and Central America and things like that. These brothers came and they was actually talking about some of the evidence and some of the history and research that they've done that proved the same thing. So, I'm pretty sure some of that was in the documentary.
Okay. All right. Well, that from my understanding, obviously a lot of us haven't had a chance, or maybe not even have the desire to want to actually to see the documentary. But apparently, the documentary is based on a whole lot of facts and research. And again, of course, at the end of the day, if you really want to know yourself, you Google and find the information out yourself. You don't have to rely on what people been telling, because we as the people we've been relying on people for so many years that we that's why we in somewhat of a predicament we are now. And what we've been told, it hasn't been the truth. It hadn't been the truth. And so now we're in a position now where, listen, it may be time to, like he said, time to wake up, Time
Absolutely.
To wake up.
Absolutely. And that's what he was saying. He said, he had been studying and trying to find out, who he is, trying to find his roots, his heritage, and there's a lot of information. I want to make this clear that Kyrie just didn't wake up and pull this off the tree. There's a lot of information historical documentation that proves that the African Americans, and other Black people are actually genetically related or descendants for the ancient Hebrews. And just to get some story, just some story to background. I don't know. A lot of us may not be familiar with the Jewish expulsion in Spain and Portugal in 1942. Well, just to give you a background, where the Black Jews and Moors were in Spain. This is when they say the Moors conquered Spain and ruled Spain for 700 years. But it was and we use the term Moor as simply just Black, but you had a lot of people want to say it's Muslims, but the word Moor is Black. And there was Moors, which were Muslim Moors and Jewish Moors in Spain. And what actually happened was there was an edict that was sent down where the Spaniards, once the Spaniards defeated the Moors or the Muslims, they expelled the Black Jews, or they expelled the Jews out of Spain. They went from Spain to Portugal, and eventually they ended up being expelled from Portugal and was taken to the west coast of Africa. So we hear a lot of things about 1492 by Christopher Columbus. 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but there were some significant events that happened in 1492, and that was the Jewish expulsion from Spain and in Portugal, and eventually these people were put on the west coast of Africa, actually sentenced to what they call Saint Thomé or Saint Thomas, which is an island off the west coast of Africa, and populated in the areas of Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, Togo, in this region. Well, history tells us that most of the slaves that were taken from this area were taken to the Caribbean, some to the Caribbean, to Brazil, and to to North America. So, and so history tells us that these events actually happened. This is nothing that was made up. This is nothing that somebody that fell asleep and woke up on the side of the bed and decided to come up with this. These events actually happened, and I'm going to show you something. I have a book here. The name of this book is "The Jews and Moors in Spain." This book tells us about the Jewish expulsion, and we hear about the Inquisitions and things like that. This is exactly what it's talking about. Then I have another book here called "We the Black Jews," and also another one called "The Jews of Spain and Portugal and the Inquisitions." So all these books talks about that these Jews being expelled out of these areas, taken to the west coast of Africa, and eventually we know through history, during the transatlantic slave trade, where did these slaves come from? Well, these slaves came out of the west coast of Africa, and then we have many resources when you get into the names of the slaves. That a lot of the slaves had Spanish names, and this shouldn't be a shock because these people came out of Spain and Portugal, right? And they were Black Jews who were expelled.
I'm going to break your train of thought, but you're telling me a lot of the slaves were also, it was also known as Jose and Rodrigo, and
absolutely.
And Pepe.
We know firsthand on the ships where Christopher Columbus sailed over here that his navigator was a Black man with a Spanish name. Right, and all of this information can be verified. Like, this is not information that individuals are making up.
So I can jump on Google right now and do my own search and say,
absolutely, you can go on Google right now, do your own search and find all this information. Right? This is nothing that like we said, nobody just woke up out the bed and made this and made this up. And I want to say this. I'm gonna open this book that this guy, Frederick David Mercado.
Slightly put the title a little bit more over towards the cameras. Okay. All right. Go ahead. You good.
This pamphlet this was originally published in 1877. All right. And this is a white guy that published this particular pamphlet. So this is not everybody want to think it's Pan-Africanism or black people pushing this theory. No, this is information that's been out there since the 16, 17 to 1800s. So I think like when Kyrie was saying what he was saying, all he was saying is that, hey, there's information out there that some of you guys haven't heard. Maybe you guys just need to take a look at this information because, black people right now, we're at this time where we're trying to find our identity, trying to find out who we are, where we come from as a people. And it's some information in this documentary that you guys may want to take a look at and do your own particular research. Actually, I did my DNA. What we call AfricanAncestry.com. I did it twice, AfricanAncestry.com and 23andMe.
So you want to trace your own DNA.
I did
for verification purposes for your verification purposes.
Absolutely.
And I'll say this again, and I'm sure you echo the same sentiment. Listen, you're throwing out information to people for like me. I haven't, a lot of this stuff I haven't even heard of it, but again, that's nobody's fault but my own. You know what they say? If you don't want black folks to know something, you put it in a book. But in this case, you said, let me go verify some of this stuff. You took it personally and you went and verified, ran your own DNA. And what were the results of that?
Well, like Kanye, I was curious because I was being exposed to this information. And so I started buying books. I don't know, maybe you can look over, I'm not, whether it be, if you make the screen big again, I think it'll be over my right shoulder. If you make the screen big, of my right shoulder, you'll see a bookcase. And so so you see the big bookcase on my right shoulder, and I just started
looking from the camera. From my perspective, it's going to be on it's going to be on the left side of the screen.
It's on the left side of the screen, right? So I started doing my own research because I became curious. And yes, and so I had no clue the first result that I got because I hadn't read. I don't think I had came across the Jewish expulsion for Spain and Portugal yet. So I'm reading this information. I had another book that's called from Babylon to Timbuktu. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
This book here from Babylon to Timbuktu, written by Rudolph Windsor.
Okay.
And that tells about the slaves coming from the west coast of Africa. So I'm figuring when I get my results back from the DNA test is going to say that I came back at the west coast of Africa. So at my surprise, when it said that my DNA I shared related DNA with people in Spain and Portugal.
Oh, okay.
So you can imagine my surprise because I hadn't read across. I hadn't heard anything about the Jewish expulsion from Spain and Portugal at that particular time. So when I read that, I'm like, I share DNA with people from Spain and Portugal. It kind of threw me. So I'm like, I never heard any of my family members being from Spain and Portugal. So okay, well, so now it's somebody over in Spain and Portugal. We share some Y DNA, right? That's paternal, your father's DNA. So I'm constantly start reading. I'm reading again and reading. Now I'm coming. Now and I've gotten to this information about Jewish expulsion from Spain and Portugal, and then to the west coast of Africa. So now I tested again. Now I did my mom and dad DNA. So now I'm getting DNA from both parents from the west coast of Africa. So now I'm reading all this history, talking about how these black Jews were expelled out of Spain and Portugal. They were taken to the west coast of Africa, and from the west coast of Africa, they were transporting the transatlantic slave trade. So all of this information is out there. So I did my DNA and checking it, and then it says that my DNA was traced to the Carolinas. In Carolinas, we know, and a lot of times it's with a slave, where the ships dock coming from the Caribbean islands and stuff like that, and they unloaded slaves. So there was a lot of information out there regarding the black Hebrews or the black Israelites. So I want people to understand that this is nothing that Kyrie has made up, and I know he couldn't quite go into that, and like everybody, we get material in which we don't always agree with everything, but that doesn't mean that there isn't information that's beneficial, and I want to say that. So in my journey, I've read things that I didn't necessarily agree with everything, but I have also read things where I found information to be beneficial, right. and validated, based on different sources, not just sources coming from black people, but sources coming from black scholars, white scholars, Jewish scholars, and things many different people.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting, and to put it, put a little bit more emphasis on what Kyrie, like you mentioned, like what you think that prompted him to do what he did. He ran across some information, and Kyrie he's been the laughing stock at times of the league of the league. When I say the league, basically the NBA, and in regard to some of the things he talked about. In particular, I think the first thing he came out with was that the world was flat. Now we're not seeing it from his perspective now, but maybe if he had opportunity to go more into detail to explain why he said that. Now, not necessarily mean literally the world was flat, but his whole concept behind that could have been something a little bit different than what we took it for. And Kyrie's been known to go a little in depth in his thinking about certain things, but then there's certain things, the COVID thing. I was down with him on that. I mean, right. The whole world's telling us we're on the verge of being extinct because of this virus. And right. So they started pumping out new drugs and coming out with new vaccines and this, that, and the other. And then he stood fast on that. He didn't get his vaccination. And I'll go on record for saying it right myself. I didn't get vaccinated either.
Right.
And didn't catch it simple.
Right. Neither did I.
2.5 years. So, right. So you can't dismiss his ways of thinking completely because, and then now, we're on the heels of this, and he's, I'm curious to see if he's going to just say, you know what, enough is enough. I don't need the NBA. He got mega money. He don't need the money. And he's got a whole, he's like he told him, he's got an army behind him. And they marched at the Brooklyn Center the other day. When they
that was the group. That was the group Israel United in Christ. And actually, the crazy thing about it is that I watched a lot of videos and seen them in videos, and a lot of the information that I was able to research biblically wise in the Bible was a lot of information I got from some of their debates. Some of their debates. And then, of course, once I started, that kind of piqued my interest. I started doing my own research, and like I say, and they have a stance on certain things that I don't agree with, but they also give good information as far as starting points. And that's the thing that we can't do. We can't be dismissive of individuals because they may have a point of view that we don't necessarily agree with, but that don't make everything about that person bad. That don't make everything that they say is somehow incorrect, or foolish. A lot of times that's what we do sometimes. Somebody says something crazy one time and we're completely dismissive of that person, and everything else they say, we just we won't listen to. And I think that's sort of what's going on with Kyrie and also, to a certain extent, Kanye, But again, like I tell people, I think when it comes to Kyrie's stance as far as saying that that he kind of alluded to that he is Semitic. He's Semitic. That every African American person in this country is Semitic. I think that's a documented fact. I don't know if that people want to argue that, but based on the term itself, based on where African American people come from, the language that's spoken and stuff like that, yeah, we will be deemed as Semitic, or or Shemitic, however they want to put that. But I would encourage everybody to do their own research, their own independent research, to find out where they come from, their genealogy, and their history. But yeah, he wasn't. Some people try to make Kyrie sound like a kook. No, he's not a kook. I think he just didn't have enough time to articulate, or he should have articulated what he found interesting in the documentary. I think he could have did that. Or whether or not he had enough time to do that or not, I don't know. But I didn't hear him say anything based on the video I seen on television. I didn't hear him say anything negative about anybody. I thought there was some stuff that would be considered anti-Semitic in the video, but I didn't hear Kanye say anything like that. Not Kanye, I'm sorry, Kyrie.
Kyrie, right. And really, and to his fairness, like you said, he just acknowledged, he posted his link there, and really the media, as I call them, the MEDIA, Madness Every Day in America is the acronym that it stands for. Madness Every Day in America, the media. But they pounced on that real quick, and I think it was in an attempt to try to squash him for actually posting a link to the site for that book, and right. Hebrews and Negroes. And really, I think it backfired because the reporters, if you remember, they kept pressing. The first thing out of their mouth was anti-Semitic.
Right, absolutely.
First thing out of their mouth, and Kyrie didn't say anything. He did not even speak to it. All he did was post his link to the page for the book, and then they tried to press him for that and try to actually basically pretty much tried to tag him as an anti-Semitic, and he hit him with with the right answer, but they weren't trying to hear that.
Right, absolutely.
I am a Semitic, but they didn't want to hear that because they didn't want the rest of the I don't even say civilized people, but unaware people. They didn't want those people that weren't quite aware, like myself, for example, to actually say, "Hey, wait a minute, there might be some truth going on here. Let me listen a little bit harder because I can't just buy what you're telling me through that microphone and that camera because you lied to me faster than my worst enemy lied to me." So, but with that being said, Kyrie didn't. I think he did right by not trying to go into detail because the more he would have spoke to it, the more they would have tried to throw at him and dig deeper and try to make him look like he didn't know what the hell he was talking about and that he really truly was anti-Semitic. And then the NBA turn around and tell him, "Man, listen, it's just like I ain't gonna say quite like that, but if you've been guilty or convicted of a crime of some sort, and then you didn't do this crime, but yet in order for you to get parole, they want you to go take these courses and classes and do this and do that just to try to prove or justify that you've been rehabilitated. And the whole time, it wasn't you that was with the problem because you didn't create this problem. And so they turn around and try to tell Tyree, this is what you got to do. As a matter of fact, they even put that, what was it, 500,000, 500,000, $500,000?
Right.
That's reparation. We're still waiting on reparation from Acres and a Mule. You know what I'm saying? They put that, and they actually, typically they'll say fine. They won't tell you how much, they'll just say fine, but they put that number out there in big bold letters, $500,000 fine. And you got to do this in order to be back in the graces with the NBA. So I'm I'm like, okay, I'm curious as to what Kyrie's going to do. If he at some point say, what the hell with this shit? I'm making enough money. I done made enough money off of basketball. Now I got a chance to make a huge, significant change by being one of the spokespersons in regards to this, because now everybody's tying me to it.
Well, and that's one of the biggest things about, we had this conversation about athletes and entertainers being somehow the leaders for African Americans, right? There's no other race of people where entertainers are their leaders, and it's in some way when it comes to us, the athlete, the comedian, the actor have been designated the voice for the African Americans in America. And to be frank, that in most cases, they're just not educated enough on issues to speak for the group or for the whole. Kyrie has acquired certain information as far as who he is, who we are as, what our history, where we come from, our origins, but he's not educated enough really to actually articulate that point.
Let me ask you this, Ben. Because the subject topic is so deep. I mean, when you say educated enough, can anyone ever be educated enough because of the depth of this situation or conversation?
Well, I think you have individuals out there who's educated enough, but I feel as though the information that would have to come out, there's certain people that don't want that information to come out. You understand what I'm saying? It's
right.
It's as though, to acknowledge that the individuals who were enslaved over in this country, the individuals who were brought across on slave ships, they are actually God's chosen people. I think that would, I don't know what would that say about the people that participated in the translated slave trade, the people who enslaved these individuals? Because I want to make it clear that we say that, matter of fact, I'm going to read something. I'm going to read something from a passage from this book right quick. And again, this is from Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph Windsor. He says that the black Jews came to Africa not only by land, but also by sea. As you recall, in the year 1484, King John of Portugal deported great numbers of black Jews to the African island of St. Thome, which is St. Thomas. The island of St. Thome near Nigeria and Cameroon was discovered by the Portuguese in 1471, and it was established as a penal colony. To this island, Jews were sent who would not accept baptism. And so there was forced conversion going on in Portugal and in Spain, and the ones that wouldn't convert was actually the island of West Coast of Africa was like a penal colony, and they were sentenced over there, and from there they were sold to other nations as slaves. And what happened? You had black people already over there that would enslave these black Hebrews and sell them to other nations, and the other nations would bring them across to America, and there they would be sold as slaves. And so then we get into biblical scripture and prophecy and things like that. But I want to share something else with you too, is that this is what we call, this is, can you see it?
Yeah, the Compact Bible Dictionary.
Right, this is Zondervan's Compact Bible Dictionary. And I'm going to read something to you, and I know most people don't realize this. I probably have never heard this before, because all we hear is that blacks are Gentiles. We're Gentiles. Somehow, that we're not God's chosen people, and that we're cursed, the Hamitic curse, right? But I'm going to read this to you, and it says this. It says, Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races. Right? I want you to understand this. It says he became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, Libyans, and the Canaanites. So this says Noah's son Ham became the father of the dark-skinned races. So Ham was the father of the Egyptians. He was the father of the Ethiopians. He was the father of the Libyans, and he was the father of the Canaanites. But he wasn't the father of the Negroes. So who was the father of the Negroes? Because the Negroes, what do they call the blacks in America? Negroes, right?
Right.
They call them Negroes. So if Ham wasn't the father of the Negroes, one of Noah's sons had to be the father of the Negroes. And that particular son was Shem, right? So Shem is the father of Negroes, and that would put Shem in the line of the bloodline of Israel, because that's where Abraham and all them come from Shem bloodline. So all this information out there, you say, I got this information out of Zondervan's Bible Dictionary. This stuff is not hidden. You don't have to dig deep. All this stuff, all of this information is out there. So and a lot of people's coming across this information, and I think that's what, Kyrie kind of probably have come across a lot of this information, and right now he's searching, he's trying to find himself, just like all the rest of us are. I think it's more about us finding ourselves than it actually is talking about anybody else.
Right. Well, I mean, and one of the problems is, for us to find ourselves is we don't know where to look. And like you said, you look in a book, you'll find a whole lot of things. Now, we're in the era of, the technology with the Google and the internet and stuff. So the internet exposure to, a whole lot of things. But, at some point you have to ask yourself, how much is that is the truth, or how much of it's planted information, to continue to maintain some sort of control. So it's a challenge sifting through it. But you got to nip away at it, bits and pieces at it, and try to match it up to what's really going on.
Absolutely, and that's what you have to really find out what's really going on, and that's, I say it's so much deeper than what we see on the surface. It's not. I don't think it's anything about Kyrie being anti-Semitic because he hadn't said anything. Literally, they said he posted a tweet, but or he posted a link to a video that had some anti-Semitic tropes in it. So I think he didn't say anything, but maybe the video itself or the documentary itself had some things that even he said that he didn't necessarily agree with. There's some things in the video that I don't necessarily agree with. But like I said, it's more so about a search of trying to find who you are. Where's your roots, who you related to, your place in this world, trying to make sense of it all. Right. So I think it's more so like that. And I know we don't want to get into we don't want to get into the Bible and things of that nature. But I say, but I can show you information that kind of supports what Kyrie's saying and what some of the other brothers are saying, is that. And I think at the end of the day, we just want to be acknowledged that we do have blood running through our veins that connects us back to the, all the way back, to the motherland, to the land of Israel. And I'm going to show you something, and I know that you've probably never seen this in your whole life. All right. The word nigger, right? I'm gonna do this. I want to show you something. I'm gonna pull up the word nigger. Hopefully, because my internet's been messing up. And let me see. Matter of fact, let me turn my internet on. I put it up on my internet.
You mean the word nigger? And I don't use the word myself, but
right. But I'm gonna.
It really ain't a term of endearment.
No, right. But I'm gonna tell you what. Okay, I want you to see this. I don't know if you can. I'm gonna try to.
Yeah, it's actually too much glare there. I can't really read it.
Right. Okay, what I'm seeing. Does it still too much glare, right?
Yeah, pull it back away from the camera a little bit, maybe.
Okay.
Nah,
you
can't read it.
Yeah, too much glare. Okay. Is there anything you can do on your end to put it up, to put it on the screen? I want people to see this. No.
Let's see here. No, you know what? There may be a way, but at this point, I'm not sure how to get to that where I can put it on a different screen. But I'm not sure how to get to that point right now. So I'm still
trying
to learn this system.
Okay, that's fine. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I want to grab something right quick.
All right. But just in case you were wondering, the audience, again, here we are, Benny and myself. We're trying to introduce a new show here to you called What's Really Going On, and we're trying to look at behind the scenes. Well, what's really going on? I always tell people, don't tell me, show me. Don't tell me you love me, show me you love me. Again, it's always some type of hidden agenda, typically, that comes into play. And you got to sift through that information and try to find the truth. It's like finding a needle in a haystack for sure. But again, we just trying to throw some stuff out there. Hopefully we'll catch somebody's attention. If you guys and girls like what you're hearing and seeing, you're more than welcome to join us. You can see the studio name down there, DJBlongStudio.com. And we'll be more than happy to entertain this subject matter going forward. We can even go live with it at this point. So just keep in mind, if it's something that piques your interest, don't hit us up. Hit us up in the chat. Hit us up in the comments. not a problem. We will definitely continue forward with it, and for those that might be interested in even popping up on the show, and so be it. We'll get you in there. All right. So you got that? You found that information, Benny?
Yeah. I'm going to be able to read some things because you can't see it on your screen. But I want to say, okay. So when we go to Wikipedia and we pull up the word nigger, right? And it says in the English language, the word nigger, we're talking about Nigger, is an ethnic slur used against black people, especially African Americans, right? So we'll go down to the next paragraph, and it says the word originated in the 18th century as an adaptation of the Spanish word negro, a descendant of the Latin adjective nigger, right? Niger, Niger. So, which means black. So I want you to understand this, that the word nigger derived from the Latin word niger, Niger. The word Niger means black, right? So I'm going to show you something. And you probably can see this. I'm going to. Okay.
Yeah, we can't really read it though.
Okay, but I'm going to put it where.
Okay,
but you see where it says 13, right? This is Acts 13:1. Yeah. It says, now there were in church that, it's going to be hard. Hold on, I'm going to see.
Yeah. Just put it in front of you. You go ahead and read it from the front.
Okay, all right. It says, now there was in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simon, that was called niggers. Nigger. This is in the Bible. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I hear you.
You hear that? This is in the Bible, Acts 13:1. It says Niger, Niger, right? But I just read you that the word nigger comes from this word Niger, Niger. It's just that when the English started using the word, they misspelled the word with 2 G's. So this word itself is in the Bible, and it says Barnabas. I'm sorry?
What Bible is that?
This is the Bible. This is regular Bible. This is in the book of Acts in the New Testament.
New Testament? Okay.
Right.
All right. So it's there. And so basically it was an 18th century typo.
Right. When they started saying nigger, they spelled it with 2 G's instead of the 1 G. Right, instead of the 1 G. But it means black, right?
Right.
So you have Barnabas, who was one of the disciples, and who they believe Simon or Simeon was Jesus' brother. And at this point in Antioch, they were being called Niger, which means black. They were being called black. Nigger. That's what nigger means. We've been told that nigger somehow means uneducated or whatever, but it didn't never started out like that. The word itself, it just means black. That's what the word itself means. The self means, right? So,
and somehow, somewhere along the line of time, it was basically given a new definition. And like I said, it's a definition that we're
well, it was used to make you hate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It was used because you got to realize Barnabas and Simon in Antioch was being called Niger. The word itself just means black. It's a Latin term for black, which the word negro, all that comes from that. It's a word that just means black. But by them making you repudiate that word black, they make you hate the darkness of your skin.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So let me ask you this: with that being said, and understanding the concept behind it, now you know you and I are kind of old school, if you will. Old school have a different view of using that word, and then of course now you got a younger generation that says they use it as a term of endearment. But then
the word itself don't bother me. I see where you're going with it. Mm-hmm. The word itself don't bother me because I understand, and this is what we have to realize, that at some point you have to take your power back, right? This is a word that existed way before the 1800s. This is a word that existed way before the 1900s. The word itself only meant black, right? We recognize this. You had Barnabas and Simon who were being called black in the Bible. So at some point, we take a word that existed hundreds of years before the 1800s. And what we don't, use it anymore because of some other group's ignorance, because of some other group's application of it, right? At some point in time, you have to not allow people to have that much power over you. The word itself doesn't bother me because I understand that the word simply meant black.
Right.
And the word and the way that it was used subconsciously caused us to hate ourselves because at the time, and I'm not 100% sure, but at the time, our ancestors probably knew that the word meant black, but it was used in a derogatory term. So therefore, if they're using the word black, your black skin, calling you nigga because you're black skin, now you start associating that word with how you look. You don't like how you look. You don't like your black skin. And so now you start feeling a sense of inferiority and not feeling real good about yourself. But I know the root word itself in its meaning prior to the 1800s simply meant black.
Right.
You know,
right. You couldn't attach a derogatory term to it. And the way actually that word is kind of transformed a couple of times throughout time. Obviously, it didn't start out that way. And now we're at a point where, we got to a point where it was straight derogatory, and it was demeaning. It was everything you could think of that was bad with anybody of color. And then and so, like you said, our ancestors heard it all the time. They was getting whipped for whatever reason.
Right.
They was hearing that word, so it became ingrained. And
because you have to realize, when we're talking about Nigeria, right? The country of Nigeria, which is the biggest country in Africa, Nigeria is actually two words put together. It's the Niger or nigger area, the area of the blacks. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You got the Niger River, the Black River. So, these are what these words come from. But like you say, but because it was using the derogatory term, now, like I say, we've allowed individuals to take a word and use the word in the manner because we have to be careful about that, because there's so much history tied to us in that part of the region that if we say nobody can use it, and then that word dies out of our vocabulary, how are we going to tie ourselves back to the Niger area? You understand what I'm saying? How are we going to tie ourselves back to that portion? How are we going to tie ourselves back to a time to when we start reading history books and we read the Bible, what Barnabas and Simon were called that, and when that word dies out, we're not going to be able to associate ourselves with the people back at that time, because we have allowed somebody just to take so much control of that word, and that word impact us that we don't even know, like we just said, bro, we don't even understand the true meaning of the word. How many of us knew that word actually meant black?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you said, in Spanish, in the negra, I don't know a whole lot of Spanish, but I know it's black,
Absolutely. And that word negro comes from that particular word. So, it's a lot, like I say, it's a lot to unwrap when we're talking about what's going on with Kanye. It's more than just, Kyrie, I'm sorry, it's more than just what we see on the surface. It's a lot there. It's a lot there.
Right. And like I said, I'm in hope that it may possibly go. This may possibly be one of the things that are changing, that will change the view of the world as it unfolds. It will bring light to the subject matter, and so to go back and be able to change that, take the word negro back to what it actually means, black, instead of that time between they stopped making it the word black and making it, like we said, some type of derogatory term.
Right.
We know enough. We'll know enough then at that point to listen. That word don't mean nothing. So at that point, for me, like I said, it mean, I grew up obviously with that word being derogatory, negative, everything.
Absolutely.
And I say, you know what? I'm not going to perpetuate the word. Not in that sense. But I don't have a problem with saying, okay, you black people. You know what I mean?
Right.
I can roll with that.
Right.
But again, it's a whole lot to unfold, and now I don't know. Kyrie may be a stimulus to the younger generation that really need to get on board with it, because they're not teaching it. They're not teaching African American history in schools no more. And I mean, they just don't want you to know nothing about yourself at this point, because they don't want you to get too smart. But this, like I said, this may be something that might have backfired on them, and I don't think this is going to be reversible. If enough of us realize and go ahead and acknowledge, oh, wait a minute, time out. You know what I mean? This things, this brother's, he hadn't come out and spoke about it though, so we really don't know his point of views. All we know is that he acknowledged the book and with his link, but we haven't heard him actually speak directly to the matter. He's told people many times, because they want to continue to call him anti-Semitic, but he's that's not. And Buzz don't want to hear it. They ain't trying to hear it. They ain't trying to hear that.
Absolutely, because I don't think it's as much about Kyrie as it is as much about these black people finding out, or the world finding out, that some of God's chosen people were enslaved over here in this country, And I think, and I say this, and I'll read this here, right? This is Psalms 83. This is there's a prophecy that says, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head, saying that the people that hate, and this is a prophecy about the children of Israel. And it's saying that the people that hate you have started to take notice of you, right? This is saying they have started to take notice of you. They have taken crafty counsel against our people and consulted against our hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance, right? So in this thing, there's a prophecy saying that the people, that the children of Israel, at some point, they're going to forget that they're even Israelites. Like, they're going to forget that they're Hebrews. They're not going to know. No matter what you tell them, they're not going to know. So, like I say, so when you start looking at, like you say, you tie biblical scripture with historical events, then you start getting a clear picture. And I think that's kind of what Kyrie at right now. I think he's getting a clear picture. But I think that, like you say, that he has a lot, like me. I'm just giving you information. I'm a babe. I'm a baby just off of research and information that I'm reading, and I can understand the information that he's getting. He's trying to process all this information. But again, like I said, I didn't hear him say anything. Like I say, he just tweeted a link. And inside the documentary, all of this information is inside the documentary with other things that we may not necessarily agree with. You understand what I'm saying? Right. So, and I think everybody has to look at it for themselves and decide, what they can digest and what they can reject, and what they can reject. So,
right.
So like I said, it's a lot, man. And when it just comes to Kyrie's position, and I think that's the scripture says something like the love of money is the root of all evil. And it's hard when you in his position where you got to make money. You can't really say how you feel because everything is being criticized. Every single thing is being criticized. And even when you articulate your point and say, I never said anything like that, or I didn't say that, it's still words are still being put in your mouth saying, that you're somehow anti-Semitic, even when you've never said anything that would be deemed anti-Semitic. Nobody can ever say that you said anything or tell you what you said. Other people start pushing a narrative about you, and then you find yourself defending yourself against things that you never said, or he found himself defending himself against things he never said. So he couldn't really talk about, what he agreed with in the documentary because he was constantly on the defensive trying to say, hey, I never said anything that could be deemed or considered anything,
Right.
To that point.
And from his platform, he everybody knows who he's he's an NBA superstar, and of course there's the league itself don't want him to speak out too much on it because they're concerned about what type of impact it's going to have on their fans and their money coming in if he speaks to really what he knows and under that platform and stuff. And so that's why I say I wouldn't be surprised to see at some point if Kyrie say, you know what, forget the NBA. I've made more than enough money off them. I got an opportunity here to be a groundbreaker and some information and bring a whole lot of people that's not in the know in my generation and under my generation and the generation that's ahead of me that's coming. Bring some information to them and see if I can enlighten them or lead them down the path of curiosity. Just curiosity. And curiosity will make you look sometimes and stuff. It'll make you look at some things. And then if you can stimulate that, and the generation is coming, then it could be like a tidal wave, a tsunami, with the information that's based out there on facts. This ain't speculation. A lot of from what I understand from listening to some of the speakers and stuff talk about the book itself, that the book had about 90% facts in it and research. And there's maybe 10% of it can be, can go either way. How it depends on how you interpret it. But most of the stuff you can't, prove it. Prove me wrong is what he's saying. And prove me wrong, and then then we can so then we can have an intelligent conversation at that point. But until you can just sit back and say that's not right, or you this or you that, and just on words, no, just like a court of law,
right?
You know what I'm saying? Prove me wrong.
Absolutely, and I think that's the biggest thing, the frustration from the Israelites, because I'm not going to say black people, I'm going to say the Israelites in America, is because that there's a resistance to acknowledge the validity of the argument. That's the thing. Like, there's enough information to say, if we don't have anything to hide, to say that that information is accurate. There's some validity to what these people are saying, and we may need to change what we've been taught all this time. If we're going to be about truth, justice, and concerned about right and wrong. Let's say that. If we're going to be concerned about right and wrong, let's acknowledge the fact that there's some information out there that validates these individuals' arguments. And I think that's the frustration, that the resistance to even talk about it, right? Because I think that's more so what it was, is that the information that Kyrie pushed out there was information that nobody wants to get out. That these blacks in America, the Caribbean, are related to the land of Israel. That they have blood ties to the land of Israel. Because now, if you're going to say that we have blood ties to the land of Israel, now we have, since Israel is a state, a country, now we have a country that can say, listen, okay, you can't treat these people this way because these people are actually bloodly related to the land of Israel. You know what I'm saying? So right. Now we have to make sure that these people are treated with a certain amount of dignity, a certain amount of respect. So they say, so it's a lot to unpack there.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's a lot to unpack there, and I'm going to say this, right? I'm going to read this to you. I go back to another biblical Bible verse, right? I'm going to go to Acts 5:30. I want you to understand this. It says, then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men. The God of our fathers raised up Jesus, whom ye slew and hung on a tree. You understand? I want to read that to you, right? So Peter is arguing with these people and saying, the God, our father, raised up Jesus, whom ye hung, whom you killed and hung on a tree. So I'm going to ask you this, Bingo. What black people, when they're murdered, what people, when they're murdered, get hung on trees?
Hey, listen, I don't know of any other than us, our ancestors. I don't know. Right. I've never heard a white man getting hung. Right. I mean, it's just something that's been historically done.
So what I've shown you, I've shown you the word nigger in the Bible, and I've shown you what Peter said, that they killed Jesus and hung him on the tree. So you got black people in this country being called niggers, and when they're being lynched, they're being hung on the trees. You think all this is by coincidence? This is not by coincidence, because some of these people know who you're the descendants of, right?
Right.
And the scripture says to the same Hebrews that they're going to put you in prison, they're going to kill you, murder you, and think that they're doing the will of God. The scripture says this now, that these people, the prophecy is they're going to put you in prison, they're going to put you in prison camps, they're going to kill you and believe that they're doing the word of God. Don't we see that these prophecies are being fulfilled? But see, we don't understand it because we don't understand that we are the Hebrews of the Bible. So we don't know why it's happening to us. But if we knew that we were Hebrews, if we knew that we were the Hebrews of the Bible, and then when we read the prophecy, we'll understand what's going on. But because we don't know that we're the Hebrews, we don't have any idea what's going on. We thinking marching and singing and all this stuff is going to fix it, but we don't understand that there was things that happened that causes this stuff to happen. You know, right. So we don't. And I tell people this: you got to understand one thing about being an Israelite is that every nation that took you captive became a powerful nation. Egypt, Greece, Rome, Babylon, the Syrian Empire, America, England. Every nation that took throughout history that took the Hebrews captive became powerful nations. You know, that's a fact. That's a fact. You know, even when the Hebrews went to the west coast of Africa, the Songhai Empire, Songhai became an empire. You know, so it's like it's so much information out there historically that that we can't get into because we don't see ourselves in the history books.
We don't see ourselves as a chosen people,
right?
Especially when you know, like you say, around the world, we're the most disrespected people on the planet.
Absolutely.
I don't care where you go, you know,
right.
and that's how powerful that story, that myth has turned in what it has turned into. It got people around the world, man. I don't make light out of it, but I can tell you, man. I was in the military for a minute, and I went to Japan, and they obviously were never accustomed to seeing black folks. And the story was one of the things, believe it or not, man, one of the things they just brief us on before we go. You know, anytime you go to a foreign country as a military man, they're gonna tell you some of the do's and don'ts of it. But they tell you, listen, if somebody come up behind you while you're in Japan and start, finding kind of touching around the butt, what they're doing is they're looking to see if you have a tail, because that was one of the myths that they were taught to believe. Black folks had tails, and that was so crazy, man. I mean, I found that so hard to believe, but it was the truth, and that's how much influence these myths and sayings that's been put out there about us. And like I said, man, we the most hated race on the planet.
Okay, and it's crazy that you say that. And it's crazy that you say that when you go to Zephaniah 2:1, it says, "Gather yourselves together, gather together, O nation not desired, before the decree bring forth, before the day pass, as the chaff, and before the fire, before the fierce." So it's saying, the scripture even says, "Gather yourselves together, O nation undesired." That no nation likes you. So get together. Y'all got to join together. Y'all got to come together because no nation likes you, right? And then the history tells you that they were enslaved by the Egyptians, that they were enslaved by the Assyrians, that they were enslaved by the Babylonians, that they were enslaved by the Greeks, that they were enslaved by the Romans. Then and from the Romans, then we go on to the expulsion by the Spaniards and the Portuguese. Then they went to the west coast of Africa, and the other tribes in Africa sold them to the other nations and brought them to America to be slaves. And now they're still over in America, even though quote unquote physical bondage is over with. They're still in America being oppressed, being mistreated, and stuff like that. So they say, "Gather yourselves together, O ye nation of undesires." You understand what I'm saying? So when you understand who you are in the Bible, you understand what's going on. But if you don't understand, You know,
Right.
if you don't understand, you can't make any sense of it.
Right.
Right.
And so, yeah, and it's, obviously it's better if you understand. The more you understand, the more you're able to adapt and deal with situations because you understand it. And that's the problem. Like you said, how do we get masses to understand?
The
how
truth.
do we get?
See, the thing about it, the truth hurts, bro. And it's like we can't, and we're not talking about any other people right now. We're just talking about ourselves, right?
Right.
We have been so indoctrinated with falsehoods, right? That and I don't understand this. We didn't become Christians in America. We were forced to become Christians in Spain, in Portugal, and on the west coast of Africa, right? We were actually Jew. We were Jew. We're not Jewish, but we were the Jews. We were following the Torah. We was practicing the Passover. We was following the Passover, Feast of Dedication, the Lord's holy days. We were Jews. And then when expulsion from Spain and Portugal, we were being forced to be something other than that. They call them crypto Jews because what happened? They was Jews undercover. They were saying they was Christians, but they were still practicing the Jewish culture and stuff like that. So our conversion to Christianity happened way before our ancestors came over here. When we came over here, we hadn't been baptized, everything, when we came over here. So when somebody like Kyrie starts reading this, or you hear other Israelite brothers start saying this, we automatically start rejecting because we can't see that you're trying to tell us that we're not Christian because this is all we know. Mm-hmm. This is all we know, and we're not just going to listen to other people. So this has more to do with us than anybody else. It literally does. It has more to do with us than anybody else. So I think, and that's the biggest thing. Like I say, but God has a strange way of doing things, man. Because this thing with Kyrie done blew up so big, people that would have never watched that documentary is watching that documentary.
Right.
Right. And I think it's gonna make some people question. People are gonna do their own research and start, hey, I need to take a look at this and see and start seeing what's really going on. But everybody has to do things in their own time, in their own time and stuff like that. But Kyrie, they quote unquote, they use the term woke. He's woke.
He's woke. Wake up, everybody. No more sleeping in bed.
Yeah, Kyrie's woke. And they try to beat him.
We started out. We kind of started out. We've been hitting on Kyrie the whole time. We wanted to touch a little bit basis about some of the things that Kanye's or Ye, as he called himself. Now, let me ask you, how do you think these two? What separates what these two are doing, or is there a separation?
I don't think there is a separation. I think that Kanye has decided to challenge it, right? And that's what I'm saying. He has decided to challenge it. Something happened that made him decide, I'm gonna face it head on and I'm gonna challenge it. I think Kyrie was just doing research, man. I think Kyrie was just studying. Kyrie was just studying on his own, just doing research, found something that was interesting in him, and decided to tell people to take a look at it. I think Ye has decided to challenge the system, right? And to let everybody know what's going on, who he believes is controlling what, why they're doing what they're doing. And the point that he's making, I think, is a valid point, that this music and stuff that's being pushed. I heard him say something. Like I said, I didn't see all the videos, but I think what he's saying is that the music that's being pushed out is causing the degradation of the moral fabric within the African community, African American community, particularly the younger kids. That they're listening to all this quote unquote trap music, about whores and killing one another and selling drugs and all this type of stuff. And it's eating away at the fabric of what we once held, dear in our community is, respecting your elders, listening to your mom and dad,
respecting women,
respecting women, right? There used to be a time that teenage pregnancy was so shameful that if you would get pregnant, if a teenage girl got pregnant, they sent her away to Georgia to have a baby.
Right.
They sent her out, and now, now it's glorified because now the grandma's so happy that she's a young grandma, and it's now, everything is, I think everything has been flipped on his head. So I think he's saying that the individuals that's behind pushing this type of music is somewhat to blame for the degradation of moral values inside our community. And I think I don't think he come across articulating that point well.
Right.
I think he gets overly emotional when he's trying to explain.
Right.
And I think that comes with doubt, not being sure that you have all the information. So when I listen to him, I kind of see the points he's trying to make. But I think that he's struggled because he's not as informed, or maybe just doesn't have the vocabulary or the confidence, in himself to be able to, speak in a manner which he needs to be able to get that point across, So, but I think they're different situations. I think one guy was just studying, trying to find himself, and I think the other guy just has determined to, challenge the system, and meet it head on.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think that, they, like you said, coming at it from two different approaches, and we really haven't heard the depthness of what Kyrie, the approach that he's thinking up here. Right. We know he's on that level when it comes to thinking that way, but he hadn't expressed it verbally. Now with Kanye, Kanye has done so many different things, man, that I definitely don't agree with, and so he's put himself in a position where how much credibility does he have if he decides to take a stand in this regards? How much credit? How much? There's so many people out there right now that don't want to even hear what Kanye got to say, and that might be what's hurting him.
Right, because I think we look at things like this, right? I'm gonna be honest with you. Geniuses are different, man. Like geniuses are different.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
When I look at Elon Musk, right, and I hear some of the things that how he goes off, some of the things that goes on Twitter and stuff like that. That guy just moved different, man. He moves different. But
I don't know if I can put Kanye in the same category as Elon Musk as a genius.
Well, let me say this though. Let me say this: for you to come from out of nowhere, being a black man, and become a billionaire, you ain't no dummy. Like you're not a dummy. That guy he wasn't born with money. He came from being an artist that nobody would sign to becoming the richest black man in America. Like literally, at one point, he was the richest black man in America. And was that by luck? I can't say that. And what I think is, sometimes people can be before their time, man. I think if you have a person that come along and he's before his time, I think he might look crazy to a whole lot of people.
I can't
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true.
No, that's you come before your time, you're gonna look crazy. You're gonna look crazy to a whole lot of people. And I'm not saying that to say I agree with everything Kanye's saying, but when I listen to him, right, I'll give you the perfect example, bro. When he said that slavery was a choice, right? Everybody got in an uproar about that, right? Kanye is crazy. How could you say slavery was a choice? Because we don't think deep enough. We think on the surface. And I want to explain it. And this is what I think Kanye's problem is. He doesn't explain things well because he gets overly emotional. And I think sometimes, like, because I'm in that instance too, where when you feel like you're being attacked, you don't think about explaining things. At this point, you're trying to defend yourself, right? So I think you kind of lose your chain of thought. When he said slavery was a choice, we have to realize how, even though it's painful, that we had ancestors that chose not to be slaves, and they died. They fought. They chose death over slavery. We have some that fought on the ships to come over here that died. We had some that fought in the motherland of Africa that died. We have some that when they step foot on this land and died. We had some that tried to run before they became slaves and died. Then we had slaves chose not to do none of that, but be a slave.
But you know what, and that's a very interesting perspective. And but is that what his whole intent was behind the fact that they had a choice? Now, had he come out and said something similar to what you said, okay, I can see the credence behind it.
Right.
But he left it open. He left it wide open.
No, but if you're trying to say something and before you can get it out, you're being attacked. Like you crazy. How could you say that? How did you say that? You're speaking about ancestors. Then you go from, because you got to realize in their situation, they're getting it from everywhere. You understand? See, right now it's just you and me talking. But they said,
If we was in a room full of people, it wouldn't be no control at that point.
You couldn't get a word in because you try to explain it. But and I say to say, I think what Kanye was doing was acknowledging in his own way the people that fought against it, the brothers and sisters that died, who chose death over
slavery,
bondage. Right, they chose death over bondage. We have brothers like Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, who chose to fight, and them brothers died. You had the white guy John Brown, who tried to who led a slave revolt but ended up getting snitched on and died trying to help people out of bondage. So you had people who chose death over oppression, death over slavery, death over bondage. Then you had some people that say, hey, I would choose to be a slave before I choose death. So it sounds cold and cold-blooded, but the reality is, brother, we had people that chose the ultimate sacrifice, and then we had people that chose, I'm gonna be a slave because they didn't want death. And then and I can read to some of you in these Bible, getting back to these black Hebrews in Spain and Portugal, when they were being forced to accept Christianity and being a slave, they said they had women slamming their babies against rocks, killing them because they didn't want them to be slaves. They had women throwing their babies overboard, killing them in the water because they didn't want their babies to be slaves, or they didn't want their babies to be converted to Christianity because they looked at they was going to go to hell when they die. So you understand what I'm saying? So you had other people making the ultimate sacrifice before they chose to be a slave. So I understood, but like I say, that comes with people having knowledge, people reading, having access to having the information. Because when you have a lot more information, you start to see things differently. And I always give people this illustration. I say, we're gonna take two dogs, right? We're gonna take a dog who was raised in a cage. And this dog been raised in this little cage, this 4x4 cage, 4 feet long, 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, right? This box. And this dog been sitting in this cage for 6 months. And you take this dog out that cage and let that dog run in your backyard, right? In a huge backyard. That dog gonna run around like he's free. That dog gonna run around, he gonna hit every corner of that backyard and he gonna go crazy. But you take a wild dog who's been roaming the prairies of Africa. He's been traveling 16 miles a day all over the prairies of Africa. And you take that dog and put that dog in that backyard. One dog feels free. The other dog still feel like he's in the cage. You understand what I'm saying? Right. And that's what information is. That's what information is. Information gives us access to a whole nother world. So when we start to see things, the people that have that access still feel like they're in bondage.
Right.
The people that don't have that access, they look at, as long as I ain't a slave, I'm free.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? If we compare our condition to slavery, we good. But the people that have that information, they're comparing their current condition to where our ancestors came from. which is true freedom. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to use that illustration that, you know, you got two people in the same situation, but what makes it different? Information.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who has access to what information and who doesn't, you know?
Right. Information is the key. And with that being said, listen, we definitely got to pursue and see how this is going to turn out, and to see if any of the listeners might be interested in maybe going and doing a part 2 of this. And you know, we can get together, and you know, like I mentioned to the people a little earlier, we welcome your comments. You know, tell us what you think. If you want to hear more, even if you want to chime in and be a part of this, we're more than willing to make this thing happen. Again, you know, just bring your information, your facts to the table, and we'll see what we can do about enlightening people more so than anything. And I'm sure this, like you said, this ain't going away no time soon. It ain't going away. So get ready for the ride, America. Get ready for the ride, world, because you finna get on a roller coaster that's trying to go the opposite direction than what you used to going in. So be ready. But anyway, because I know we talked. We've been about a little over an hour and a half, close to an hour and a half,
Perfect,
and
perfect.
You know how long-winded you can get. So I'm
absolutely, man. Talk about it, and like I said, there's a lot of stuff. Like I say, we had this condensed time, so we had to kind of scale things back. But I can tell you, like I said, I agree with you totally, cuz I don't think this thing going anywhere. And then when I heard Candace Owens, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Candace Owens, but she's a sister. I think she's very educated. I think, in my personal opinion, she's on the wrong side of certain things.
Uh-huh.
But when she said that she watched the video, I mean the documentary, you know, and Candace is like, she's conservative. She's like she's recognized as, she's one of the face of the Black conservative party. I'll say that she's one of those individuals, right?
Okay.
She's a Black Republican.
Okay.
But I think the sister is I like her. I'm crazy about her because I think she hits Black America with things that we need to be hit with, you know. And I was talking to a guy today. I was like, you know, all of Black America, we're so Democrat, right? We vote Democrat, but most of us are conservative by nature.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Like when it comes to religious views, when it comes to same-sex marriages, you know, when it comes to, you know, abortion, that stuff like that, most Black people are conservative. So, right. And that's some of the stuff that she's saying. Like, it's not you know, a lot of times we move in group. We do a lot of things in I don't want to say group economics, but group politics. When we getting back to Kanye, I mean Kyrie, we should study more. We should read more. You know, we should find out what's going on and stuff like that. So yeah, but when Candace Owens said she watched the documentary, oh yeah, that kind of raised my eyebrows there because you know, and she actually defended. When you get a chance, type in Kanye, type in Candace Owens defend Kyrie Irving, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. She is a sharp. Okay. Yeah, Candace Owens. She's a sharp sister, man. She's sharp.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's the impact. That's why I say this thing is just going to continue to grow and get bigger, and it's going to spread like a wildfire at some point. Because people like you said, Candace Owens, once they actually get into it and read the information in that all this basically all this, I don't want to say crucifixion that they're trying to do with Kyrie right now, but I think they're trying to get him out of the league as part of it and stuff, and you know, putting enough pressure on him so the NBA say, you know what, man, we can't have you with this stuff no more. Same thing they did with Kaepernick, you know what I mean?
Right, absolutely.
And then they turn around and say, damn, Kaepernick was right, but they never gave him another job, and they got in NFL after that. Right. So and I think that's what they're pushing towards, to try to get back Kyrie up in that corner like that. But The thing is, I think Kyrie is probably a lot more. Kaepernick was sharp brother, but Kyrie is probably a lot more prepared and got a lot more army behind him in that regards to this sense.
You know? Right, because excuse me, there's a huge Israelite community in America. Right, there's a huge Black Hebrew Israelite, and I hate to use that term Black Hebrew Israelite because it makes it seem as though, you know, like they're the Black Muslims. Like, no, there's a huge Hebrew community, right? In America, African Americans. And they support Kyrie, right?
Oh,
you see them other brothers that marched on the Barclays Center, them guys that marched on the Barclays Center, they said they was 1,000 deep when they marched out there on the Barclays Center.
They was more than 1,000 deep because I was watching the video. Man,
and that's the group burying. That's the group burying. Remember my friend Bear, Tall Bear? Tall, light-skinned dude. What Carl Burns' nephew. He's a part of that group.
Okay. Yeah. Man, listen, and to your point, I'm glad you brought that up. You say thousands, but I heard a couple of the media members saying, well, Kyrie had about 100 people out here protesting on his behalf, and I saw the video where, man, they was 5 rows. I mean, they was lined up five across, 5 or 6 across, and man, the line had to be like, I would say 2 blocks long, 3 blocks long, 6 rows across. You tell me there was 100 people there. They tried to play it down is what they was doing.
Right, they tried to play it
down like there's no support there. But yeah, man, it shocked me. I said, damn, they got waves of the protesters coming in to support Kyrie on that. But yeah, man, we listen. We got a whole lot going on and got to talk about, and we'll see what we can do as far as our next airing. For those of you out there that's listening in. This show, you definitely be able to join us. We'll let you know next time we're gonna come across the air. But in the meantime, if you go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification button, and if you like it, that's cool. If you don't like it, you can express your opinion because that's what it's all about. But we're not trying to cast any negativity on anybody or any race or any being. Period. We just want to throw out some information out there and let you decide it. You want to research it, you take it upon yourself to research it. That's it. The whole thing behind it is take a look at it. Don't just dismiss it. Don't just believe what the next person over there is just going to tell you. Take a look at it. Take a peek. Don't be scared. Don't be scared.
Absolutely.
And in closing on that, Benny, anything else you want to close out with?
Nothing. Just appreciate your time. Thanks for having this platform. So like I said, we just talk about, like I said, what's really going on, and hopefully was able to give some people some insight. I know they hear about what happened, what's going on with Kyrie, but just try to give you guys some information that what he may have run across in the video and what may have caused him to tweet the link to the video, because I just want to share the information that he may have found interesting and wanted to give you guys. That's it. That's why we just kind of just share that information that what he may have found interesting. That was more so about him, his heritage, us, and our history, more than anything else.
Absolutely. With that being said, we're gonna go ahead and back up on out of here. You know how I usually like to do, and close things out with a little instrumental, a little bit of music behind the scenes. We all know to love ourselves some music. But again, it's been a pleasure. It's fun. Hope you picked up something. And remember, tune in when you subscribe, hit that notification button. You'll know when we're back on discussing these matters, and we'll take it a little bit further. We have maybe another different guest or different Benny, and I'm sure he's got plenty more information, a lot more than I can give you. That's for doggone sure. But either way, we hope to be learning at the same time. In the meantime, we getting ready to get out there. What's really going on in America? What's really going on, world? What's really going on in the universe? We're going to take it universal. Can we do that? We out of here.
Take care. Guys, be safe.